This is a sculpture that I started a while back and it's just been sitting on the shelf for quite a long time. It's not exactly finished, but it does have some interesting and perhaps useful techniques in it that I thought might be worth sharing. And really I just wanted to share the overall idea for the sculpture as well. Now obviously this is a sculpture of the bat creature from Bram Stoker's Dracula, and this is a bit of a fan favourite really. You see so many sculptures of this piece showing up online. I've had a go at it in the past and never really done it justice, and I wanted to have another go at it. But I wanted to try and do a slightly different take on it. And one aspect of the character that I've always really loved is the way that it collapses into a horde of rats in order for Dracula to escape. So I wondered if there might be a moment that you could capture where the creature was sort of coalescing back out of a crowd of rats. So that was sort of the intention for the sculpture here. I wanted to capture something halfway through that transformation. So I started off by doing some quick sketches to try and get that idea to sort of see how it could look, and I kind of had the idea of a tornado of rats in mind. I guess I was thinking maybe a little bit of Sharknado, I don't know if you've ever seen those films, but this is a Ratnado, so I was trying to come up with how that could look and sort of just the overall structure of the character. So as you can see, what I was trying to go for was having the lower portion of the character in a sort of a whirlwind type shape, which I could then cover with sculptures of rats. So I was trying to work out how that could work out sculpturally. Once I had a basic idea, I could then start sculpting this up in monster clay. So I've got a very basic armature inside of this, and I'm primarily building the tornado aspect of it around one leg. The other leg's going to be sort of half formed out of rats. As I mentioned, I haven't quite got this sculpture into a position where I consider it finished. I think there is actually some problems with the overall pose of it. So while I really like the idea of this, I think if I were to try and complete it, I would actually start from scratch because I like the concept. I just think the execution isn't quite there. The design of this character has clearly struck a chord with fans because you often see renditions of this. I've seen tattoos of it and latex masks and all manner of other sculptures as well. I think it's something to do with the face of the creature. I guess it's somewhere between a werewolf and a werebat, you know what I mean? It's got that sort of hybrid look to it. I really like the way the arms are folded up and look like they could fold out into wings. And also the face itself I think is really well done. So I wanted to give quite a lot of prominence to the face on this. And so I spent a fair bit of time trying to get that right. I don't think I quite pulled it off, to be honest with you, which is another reason why I never quite got around to finishing this sculpture. So of course the main aspect of this sculpture is the tornado of rats idea, and I was faced with the problem of, well, how do I do that many rats? I mean, obviously I could sculpt each one individually, but that would take forever. So what I decided to do was actually make a mould of a variety of individual rats and then cast up a load more in monster clay. Now one of the cool things about monster clay, if you've ever heated it, is it does go quite liquid once you get it to a certain temperature. So that means you can pour it into a mould and get a cast in monster clay of something. So that's quite useful if you want to have repeating forms within a sculpture, and I've used this previously on my zombie sculpture. The base was made from a mountain of skulls, and I did that just by casting up 3 or 4 and then replicating them throughout the design. So I'm going to do the same here with the rats. So what I've done is to sculpt a variety of rats in different poses, and I'm now going to make a mould of this. Now I've sculpted these on a styrene plastic base so it's nice and smooth, and what I'm now doing is building a foam board wall around the sculptures so I can pour some silicone over them to make the mould. So I'm just weighing out some silicone and catalyst and I'm mixing that together. Now I'm not getting too fancy with this, I'm not degassing the silicone, I'm not doing anything particularly complicated. This is just a simple pour mould, so I'm just pouring the silicone over my sculptures and letting that set. Right, so I've left that for a few hours and come back and that's now dry, so I can now demould my sculptures and start doing some casts. So what I've done here is to put the tub of monster clay in the microwave for a few minutes, and as you can see that's gone quite liquidy. Now obviously you've got to be quite careful, that's pretty hot, so a bit of caution is needed. But because it's liquid, what I can now do is use a tongue depressor to start pushing some monster clay into the mould. And once I've got it full, I can just leave that for a half hour or so and let the monster clay harden, and I can then come back and release the cast from the mould. Oh, and there we go. They do look a little bit like chocolate actually, but they should do the trick. Now, it's important to mention that these casts aren't exactly perfect. They're quite rough, but they're close enough to save me a hell of a lot of time in terms of sculpting, so I don't need to sculpt every single one. I've got a shape that's sort of 60% there already, so that saves a hell of a lot of time if you're trying to do lots of repeating shapes. I think it's also the case that because it's such a wide array of shapes and there's quite a lot of detail in there, you don't necessarily need to detail every single rat. I think the detail gets lost in the overall whole, so I think that helps when you're sculpting things which have lots and lots of detail in it like this. So there are all the casts of my rats, so what I can now do is start positioning them on the sculpture. What can be useful is to actually use a heat gun to soften the clay a little bit if you need to, and that just means you can sort of push the individual pieces into the clay and they'll stick quite nicely. So this is really just a case of positioning the rats and trying to get that sort of tornado look that I wanted. I've also decided not to sculpt one of the arms and one of the legs, and I'm sort of adding rats to the end of those to make it look like the form is coalescing from the rats. So there we go, this is just a quick look at this one really. I didn't want it to sit on a shelf and not get seen. So as I said, I really like the idea of this one, I just think the execution wasn't quite there. But that's not to say I can't go back and try again. So that's it from me. I hope this was interesting in some way, and maybe this technique will be useful for you if you're doing a sculpture with lots of individual pieces in it. But for the time being, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thanks very much for watching. I'll be posting videos on future projects, so if you'd like to keep up with what's going on, please do subscribe. Alternatively, you can visit my website, which is www.thedarkpower.com, or you can find me on Facebook, just search for The Dark Power.